Okay.
And anyway, I think look, what Buddhism has done, I don't see that as particularly relevant.
You're missing the point. You're damning the analogy. It's a logical fallacy to damn the analogy. Just let me get my point.
Go ahead and finish.
All right, let's get your point over, and then let's get the last caller in, please.
The point I'm trying to make here is that people may do certain things because sometimes the social construct of society shapes the disposition to think it's particularly okay to do. And the reason I may have looked squeamish to you guys, because I know you guys are a product of your social constructs, that you are squeamish to those things. Just like, take food, for example. You may eat chicken here, but if you go to China...
But so are you. The mere look, Islam is just a cultural phenomenon. If you actually were to wipe out all knowledge of Islam from the world, people would just happily pick up another religion. Right? There is nothing divine about Islam. It is a social construct. You are saying that everyone else is a victim of these sort of social inherited constructs, but not you.
No.
You are, yeah. So Islam is just a social construct.
Yeah, I agree with you to the point where it shapes your disposition. I totally agree with that. Of course. That's
okay, on that point of agreement, I'm going to insist that we get the last caller in. Welcome.
All right, one last thing I've been trying to say for 30 minutes. Tzortzis, refresh your video. You're not showing up on the blog.
It doesn't really matter, Arn. Sometimes the video freezes. As long as we have audio, it facilitates the discussion.
Jeg, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here. Good evening.
Hello, sir. Welcome to the show. I'm sorry
Thank
to have kept you waiting.
I'm really sorry to be
a lot of
in the
people
show
want to say a
so
lot of
late.
things. Do carry on.
I'm sorry to be coming in the show so late with a question like this, but I am really puzzled by the entire religion of, Islam, because for me how do you trust the claims about reality from essentially what is a free-form poem that you're supposed to interpret and perform, essentially? That's impossible to perform, in and of itself. So how do you extract rigid rules and views on the world from a piece of poetry?
I think that's aimed at you, Hamza.
Yeah, I think so. Well, first and foremost, the Quran is not poetry. So the question may not apply, but if I want to get the gist of your question is how you take a piece of literature that may be seen as a masterpiece or has literary...
No, not any piece of literature. A piece of literature that can be so freely interpreted. It's incredibly interpretive as far as this conversation has gone, as far as any interpretation of the religion. It's just like any religion, it's incredibly interpretive. So how do you extract something rigid from that?
Okay, there's two things here. First and foremost, the meaning of the Quran is static with regards to what the words actually mean. There's only particular scope in Arabic language of how you could exhaust what the words mean. However, the interpretation upon these words, yes, it is. It's a vast ocean. And this is part of the sciences of the Quran where the scholars, when they looked at legal verses, and by the way, there's only around 500, 600 legal verses in the Quran. And those legal verses are just like any other legal tradition, whether secular or not. Hence, I forgot his name now. Magic Sandwich. He basically studied law and he knows about the rules of interpretation you extract to form rules on UK statute law. So the Quran is no different from any other legal book. The beauty is though that
it's significantly different, and one of the reasons is that in this country we have an established set of precedents. That is to say that you can go back and look over history, about court decisions and their interpretations. You can freely access those case laws with decisions of a Sharia court. When are they ever published? They're not. So please do not try and say that it's the same thing.
I would like you to eat your words. There's a Jewish scholar called Amnon Cohen. He wrote a book, it's 2 volumes, called A World Within. When we had relative peace and harmony under the Ottoman period, he collected 1,000 sigil records, 1,000 records.
Yes, I'll retract that statement and just add this bit. Present day. Let's not go back a
I
millennium.
agree with you, but I keep on agreeing with you guys that present day is not a manifestation of
Right.
Islamic.
So present day, Sharia courts do not publish their decisions. You cannot go to a book and determine what the statutes are, what laws are accurate, and what the penalties are, because it is fluid and it is determined by judges who are not appointed by reason of their expertise.
This is why I go back to my previous point. We need to read an academic book on Sharia law, which when we see Sharia law, it has to be based on the Quran and the prophetic teachings, regardless of what is the output of any type of court.
Well, I think this all goes. I'm sorry. This all goes back to, I think, what Jeg and many other people have raised, is that why is this superfluous literature required after there's been a divine revelation? You know, it seems to me that if I was I'm not gonna blaspheme this one time and compare myself to the God of your religion, but if I was just a spiritual entity with much knowledge much greater, let's say I'm a jinn, but not an evil or mischievous jinn, and I just want to help mortals, okay, and I give them a message just from me, just what I know from being a magical creature and having magical senses and knowing things that they couldn't possibly know. I will, if I want them to go to the store and buy some milk, I'm not going to put a riddle or a poem about it. I'm just going to say, go get milk. And then if they come there and they say, well, you know, the note on the refrigerator may say go get milk, but it really means go get eggs, then I'm just going to turn my back on them and find someone who's not quite so dense.
Sure. But there's two things here. First and foremost, we're assuming the people who interpret the traditions are first and foremost qualified and know how to interpret the traditions. And secondly, they don't have any other hidden agenda. We see this all the time, even in Western law, where people have hidden agendas, right? That's the first point. The second point is that we have to understand that the way the Quran has been developed, you could even argue that it's a timeless text from that perspective, because you could extract law and values across centuries. And this is why we call the text of the Quran a dynamic text. And unfortunately, maybe for people who want things handed on a plate to them, you have to extract law. And the way to do that, you have certain conditions in place. You have to be qualified to do so. So if we could find people who are qualified to do so, and then it comes up with some of the rubbish that we see in our society, then yes, we may have a discussion. But generally, what happens in many cases, especially in tribal areas, they don't have the adequate tools to interpret the Quran and the prophetic traditions in the first place. Namely, the Arabic language.
Okay, wait. Aaron and Thunder both
You have the Arabic language, Aaron.
Wait a second. I think that you misunderstood the core objection, okay? Because what you responded with didn't have much to do with the objection that Jag raised or that I advanced. It's about the lack of actual specifics and clarity compared to what the level of clarity that a perfect being should be able to accomplish. So let me actually go ahead, Aaron.
Okay. I don't even remember what I was going to say now.
Okay, I'd like to jump back in then.
Can I ask something?
Go ahead.
So you, Hamza, you can't read the text yourself out loud, and you say no one can read it perfectly or something. Is that right? Or perform it?
I never said that at all.
I think he's referring to the part where you said it was impossible under normal means.
What, you mean the linguistic and literary miracle I was talking about?
Yes.
Oh, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So we went to our, just to rephrase, I wasn't talking about that you can't read it or understand it. What I was talking about is, in the Arabic language, when you utter a statement or you put words together and sentences together that are grammatically correct, you would not produce the unique literary form of the Quran. You would always fall into the known literary forms of the Arabic language, namely prose and poetry.
Okay, well, I think we've
Can I have something
So
just
it
for
is
this occasion,
poetry,
actually.
so it is interpretive. So it's not correct. God damn it.
I have something just for this occasion, if you don't mind. Stop me if you recognize this one. 'Twas brillig, and the slithy toves did gyre and gimble in the wabe. All mimsy were the burrow groves, and the mome rats outgrabe. Now, this could only have been written if Lewis Carroll had been visited by a leprechaun, I'm convinced. Because otherwise, I mean, he uses all these words we don't understand. In many ways, it defies all known English conventions of grammar and of actually no, it does follow some conventions, but not others. But anyway, that's I'm just being silly right now. But in all seriousness, I'd like to tread out on some thin ice, if you don't mind.
Fair analogy.
Muslims maintain that there were, 4 revealed traditions, right? There's the book of Moses, David, Isa, and then finally of Muhammad, which is the Quran. Is that accurate here?
Yeah, we believe that. We believe in the previous scriptures.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, but the previous scriptures are not entirely accurate because people with later agendas, according to tradition, have added their own words and changed things, which is why there's discrepancy between what the Bible says and what the Quran says. Is that also more or less accurate?
I think to be a bit more accurate is that specifically with the biblical tradition, we would argue that, especially the New Testament, there has been not only minor scribal errors, but major scribal errors, and the preservation of the Bible itself, if it was to put under the criticisms of the prophetic traditions, hadith, it would come out as a da'if. Da'if basically means a fabricated narration. So the historicity of the Bible is not entirely accurate in our humble perspective.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, for example, in the book, the Torah, or to you, the book of Moses, there's about 7 chapters, I think, where Yahweh, as he's called in or Allah, whatever, the God of Abraham dictates very meticulously, chapter after chapter after chapter, giving exact, precise measurements and which materials to use. He tells the building of the Ark of the Covenant. He talks about building lampstands, curtains. He talks about putting angels on the ark, which direction they face, and everything he gives this many cubits by this many cubits by this many cubits. And he is so precise in these instructions that if we had craftsmen with the same abilities today, we could make virtually exact replicas of that equipment and all of the trappings of the temple that Moses was building, that was supposed to accompany them and finally rested in, I guess, Jerusalem. So in this instance, he's acting like the aliens in that Jodie Foster movie, where they say, okay, we're going to have you build this magical transdimensional gyroscope, and then it tells them how to make the things, to make the other things, to actually build a device. So given that in this instance, unless this is a result of some corruption, a transcription error, as you said earlier, someone with a later agenda inserting these verses, it seems that when he wants to be, the God of Abraham can be very precise. And so it doesn't follow from, at least my perspective, that when he's talking about something that seems much more important than a lampstand, when he's talking about, instructions on how not to burn in hell forever, that he could, in all good conscience, be in any way, shape, or form vague, non-committal, or leave anything he says open to interpretation.
Okay, so what's your point?
Why was he so vague about the important stuff and so specific about the unimportant stuff?
Hamza, over to you.
Yeah. Why was he so vague about the unimportant stuff, but specific?
No. Excuse me. I don't know if you misspoke, but vague about the important stuff.
Okay. Well, in the Bible.
In any of the books.
Well, we would argue that he's specific for the important stuff in the Quran, definitely. But
then why are there so many interpretations? What Almighty is saying is that when it comes to building lampstands, that the description is so accurate that everyone could actually do it exactly right. When it comes to the description of whether you should stone adulterers or whatever, or throw homosexuals off high places, there are a gazillion interpretations. Now, which of those do you think is more important for your God to accurately describe?
Listen, guys, there's 3 interpretations. I think you're a bit of hyperbole here, yeah? There's not millions of interpretations. I could put the interpretations on the back of a fag packet, yeah? On a cigarette packet. They're not millions of interpretations. That's what I said.
No, there are as many interpretations as there are Muslims. You get any two Muslims and ask them to write down the Sharia. You get any 2 Muslims and ask them to write down the Sharia. How many of those do you think will match letter for letter?
Quite a few. The interpretations. Well, fair enough. But the interpretations, 70% of the school of thoughts, the 4 mainstream school of thoughts, for instance, they agree with everything. 70%. It's the 30% they disagree on, and those things are on furu', which basically means in Arabic non-fundamental aspects. For example, we know people who do so-and-so get punished, but the difference would be, what are the conditions? Are they 19? Are they 15? And stuff like that. See?
Again, the problem comes down to faith, ultimately. And it comes down to faith because faith is inherently dishonest. I have to say this 9 times every single show. If it was genuine and real, it wouldn't require faith. And you wouldn't have this kind of ambiguity. If you had something that would verify so that we don't make it a philosophical question, even the definition of a common word becomes a philosophical question where we may or may not agree, why don't we have anything that we can verify? I mean, we're arguing over... Okay, you talked about outdated cliches, right? I've seen you describe atheism as a knowledge statement. That is an outdated cliche, because I'm not making a knowledge statement.
In the philosophy, in the dictionary of philosophy, atheism is, in some books, is defined as a knowledge claim, and that's true. So it's
I won't deny that somebody wrote down the wrong definition somewhere. I won't deny that. If you can't
atheists
get
don't agree with each other anyway.
What?
Generally. From my humble...
I don't think that a discussion of the definition... I don't think a discussion of the definition of atheism is actually of interest to many people.
I agree, but I want Hamza to make his point. Sorry. Go on.
I wanted to make is not to split hairs, but for instance, you know, if we want to look at sociological things, my experience with atheists, specifically at the World Atheist Convention, they don't even know what atheism means.
That's why I had to address it. That's why I had to say that many of the people, and I did say this on stage, go back and look at my channel.
I'm glad you're shipping, and I'm glad you're leading your people to the right.
I clarified that the reason...
prophet of atheism.
There's no such thing. Never mind.
I know. I'm only kidding, guys, man.
Yeah.
I've heard people say that in all earnest, so I apologize for not getting
so have I.
out. Yeah.
So have I.
Just as a matter of interest, Hamza, what do you think is meant by the word atheism? Or what do you think, for example, labeling me as an atheist, which I am, what do you think that actually means?
Well, it could mean a lot of things, really, to be honest. But
no, it can't.
Well, let him go. Let him go.
It's all right. He could speak for me. It doesn't matter. Basically, what I believe it could mean is, first and foremost, that a rejection of the supernatural.
No.
Secondly, it can mean that you don't believe in any deities or gods.
That's it.
That's it.
That's all.
Your second one was spot on, and that's it. You can take it no further.
So I know
we're going to go back to the caller. I'm sorry, we've overrun by again 2 hours. I am going to bring this show to the end. I'm sorry. Back to the caller first, and then we'll go through everyone on the panel.
Sure.
Is he even still here? Yeah.
No, Jag, we're going to kick you off and put peace to you all.
All right, see you guys later.
Later.
All right, that's him gone. Hamza, can I thank you very much indeed for coming into the lion's den, so to speak, and taking on a lot of questions and the like. I'm going to actually allow you the last word. So let's go through the...
before we do that, DPR, there's one...
Thunder, you always do this. What?
Hamza, is there anything that I can do as an act of desecration to the Quran that you think should actually warrant me being sentenced to death?
I don't know what that question means.
Blasphemy.
I'd rather you didn't even ask it.
Blasphemy. You think that people should be killed for blasphemy?
Listen, you could do whatever you want.
We've already done this.
Okay?
No, we didn't do blasphemy. We did apostasy.
We did. We did do blasphemy.
Yes, we did.
Sorry, Thunder. I'm sorry. It's 2 hours after we should have stopped. We did discuss this.
Thunder, have a good night, man.
Right. Last words. Firstly, Aaron. Let's take it in alphabetical order. Aaron. Last words.
Okay. I was looking for something verifiable. I knew in advance that I wouldn't get it because I've been in this game for about 20 years. And no one yet has ever given me any verifiable reason. I mean, it's always a matter of subjective opinion. The definitions always change in every discussion. Go back and look at the archives. They always argue that the definitions aren't what the dictionaries say. It's just like Humpty Dumpty said in Alice Carrow's book, when I use a word, I mean it to mean precisely what I mean it to mean and nothing more or less. So you can never establish a dialogue. There's always premises that are assumed that always turn out to be inaccurate. You haven't shown me anything that is unique about Islam. You haven't shown me anything that is unique about the Quran. The Quran has predecessors and parallels in other religions, as the other religions do too. You've given me nothing to conclude that there is a God, but what you have shown, quite alongside every other religion, is that the God that they worship is every bit as barbaric and prejudiced and crass and primitive and crude as the society that invented it. And that's where I have to sit.
Almighty.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Tzortzis for coming on. I know that you were outnumbered. I hope that you didn't feel that it was. I hope you didn't feel that you were treated unfairly or bullied. We tried to give you time enough to get your point across and so forth. Now, here's the thing. I watched a movie with Benicio del Toro as Che Guevara, and it portrays him in a very glowing light. And it really glosses over. They were good films, but it glossed over the fact that even if Che really believed that he was supporting a worthy cause, the end result of his actions was to bring Fidel Castro to power, and Fidel Castro did a lot of really terrible things and brought a very backward system into place where people will take a refrigerator door and fashion it into a boat to escape from it. So I think that, unfortunately, there are a lot of Muslim Che Guevaras running around who need to be careful what they wish for. By your own admission, there is not a single Islamic state. There's not a single state in existence. There are lots of societies that are 90% or more people proclaiming Islam, but not a single one that certainly I would really plan on moving to, and none that many Muslims, especially in the West, would countenance as being true Islamic traditions. And as you pointed out with the Arab Spring, nearly the entire, all of North Africa, the Levant, and the Peninsula are in an uproar because they're upset with the status quo. And, I'm not convinced that this ideal that you have envisioned really exists. And even if it did, there are so many abortive attempts at bringing this about that I really wouldn't be willing to risk it. So at the risk of being perceived as causing mischief in the countryside, and I hope that nobody comes to my house and cuts off my right hand and left foot for saying this, in your mission to convert more people to your religion, I sincerely hope that you fail.
Thunder, last words.
We have 2,000 years of history on this. If you like, Islam doesn't come to us cold. It's not just your description of it, however intellectual you would like it to be. We actually have a history, a track record of these things. And Islam, in its early incarnations, was fairly congenial to scientific progress. But for the best part of the last 1,000 years, it's essentially been a point of intellectual stasis, which has not progressed. Whereas when Christianity changed and softened its dogmatic borders enough to allow in the Renaissance, that took us to the moon in less than 300 years. Now, it's the problem with dogma. If you actually accept some sort of divine revelation as being true and always true, you can never progress beyond it, which I think is a significant reason why Islam languished in the intellectual dark ages, and to an extent, as is practiced today, still does.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. Hamza, I said you could have the last word, and you do indeed.
First and foremost, guys, thank you very much for allowing me into your den. It was nice. I don't think I got bitten. You guys were nice. But first and foremost, I think if this were to happen again, maybe not with myself, but with anyone else, I think it should be on a one-question basis. Because in fairness, there's a lot of things to say under various topics. For example, when Aaron Ra, he asked for verification, I gave him the linguistics and the literary perspective of the Quran. I didn't hear much contentions. Hopefully, when you read the website, the inimitablequran.com, maybe we could have another discussion on that. Also, we used two arguments for the existence of God, which we couldn't go into even more depth. which was unfortunate. A lot of the questions ranged from Sharia, sociology, politics, this and this, anthropology. Everything came out today, and the best we could do is just throw out this one-line statement. So that's unfortunate. However, I think these kind of things should continue. I think if anything, it means that we can have a conversation, and especially in Britain, you would appreciate this, that these type of conversations must continue. And I would advise that we both go to the underlying traditions of a particular society rather than look at the manifestations, because sometimes they're not one and the same. So in that light, thank you very much for participating, and hopefully we could do this in depth on a one question basis next time.
Yes, I thank you very much for those words. I agree, it is somewhat difficult. The nature of the show is that we do like to invite callers in, and that obviously means that we're likely to discuss more than just one issue. But thank you very much indeed for your participation. Thank you for everyone that has turned up. As usual, we will try and get this posted onto YouTube as soon as possible. I apologise for the way in which it happened on the last occasion, but we'll hopefully get it up within 2 or 3 days. But thank you indeed for everyone that's participated, and see you all 2 weeks' time.